They thought I left on my own, that I wanted distance, or freedom, or silence. But the truth is, I never left. I was hidden, locked away in the dark by the man who called himself my father. I was 16, not 16 going on 30, just 16. The kind of 16 that still doodles hearts on the corner of math notes, that hides love letters in coat pockets and doesn't know how to kiss without giggling. That kind of 16. His name was Ryan. He was 17, played guitar badly, and talked to me like I was the only girl in the world. We'd met in English class when he let me borrow his copy of To Kill a Mockingbird, the pages filled with his messy underlines and notes in the margins. I kept the book for longer than I needed to. Sometimes I think I fell in love with his handwriting first. We weren't sneaking around at first. We weren't doing anything wrong, but in my house, feelings were dangerous, especially if they didn't have permission. My father didn't believe in dating, or dancing, or boys. He said love was a distraction, that a girl's virtue was her value, that no good man wanted a used gift. His rules weren't suggestions. They were commandments. My phone was checked nightly. I couldn't go out unless my mother came along, and if I so much as smiled at a boy in the hallway, I'd hear about it at dinner in front of everyone. It wasn't religion, it was control. And we all played along, even Mom. She wasn't cruel, just quiet, careful. She believed the best way to keep peace in the house was not to provoke the storm. But I was 16. 16 is curious. 16 wants to feel seen. So I lied. Not big lies, just little ones. I told Dad I was going to the library. I just didn't mention Ryan would be waiting for me at the park across the street. We never did anything bad, just talked, held hands, shared dreams we were still naive enough to believe in. Oh. But even dreams can turn dangerous when they don't follow the rules. It was a Saturday afternoon when it happened. Dad was supposed to be working late, and I'd stayed after class with Ryan behind the bleachers. He kissed me for the first time that day. Soft, nervous, perfect. I still remember how the wind smelled like rain. But when I walked into the kitchen that evening, Dad was waiting. He didn't shout, didn't hit. He just said my name. Once, low, quiet, and I knew I was caught. He'd found the texts, the notes, the dried flower Ryan had given me in my backpack. Everything. He called me a liar, a disappointment, said I was throwing away everything they'd given me for a boy who didn't even know what love meant. I tried to explain, to cry, to promise I'd stop seeing him, but he didn't want apologies. He wanted control. That night, he took my phone, my school privileges, my after-school activities. He called the principal and requested I be moved to all-girls courses if possible. Then, he told my mother he was looking into transferring me, somewhere more structured. The next week, he told the neighbors I was preparing for early college. That's why I wouldn't be around much anymore. The week after that, I missed my period. At first, I told myself it was stress. A late period wasn't that uncommon. Right, I'd read that online. Exams, hormones, even weather changes could mess with your cycle. That's what I told myself as I stared at the ceiling every night, counting days like they were ticking bombs. But the knot in my stomach only got tighter. So one day, while Mom was out getting groceries and Dad was at work, I biked to a drugstore 2 towns away, paid cash, stuffed the test kit into my hoodie like it was contraband. Back home, I locked the bathroom door and sat on the cold tile floor, heart thudding so loud I swore the neighbors could hear it. 2 lines. I stared for minutes that felt like hours. Pregnant. I was 16. I still slept with a stuffed bear. I didn't even know how to cook rice. And now I was going to be a mother. I didn't cry. I just sat there, frozen, thinking of all the ways my life had just ended. I didn't tell Ryan, not yet. I didn't tell anyone. I couldn't, especially not my father. But secrets don't stay hidden forever. Not in my house. It happened a few weeks later. Mom had gone to care for her sick mother across the state. She called me from the train station, promised she'd be back in a week or 2. I begged her to stay longer, just so I wouldn't be alone with him. She thought I was being dramatic. But the day after she left, my father came into my room without knocking, like he always did. Only this time, he wasn't looking for laundry. He was holding something, a plastic wrapper, torn, with pink edges, the pregnancy test. I must have forgotten to throw it deep enough in the trash. He said nothing at first, just looked at me, and then the rage came. He didn't hit me. He didn't scream. That would have made it easier. He said I had shamed the family, that I had spat in the face of everything he taught me, that no one would ever look at our family the same way again. You'll ruin everything, he whispered. I tried to speak, to say it was mine to fix, to beg for time, to promise I'd go away if I had to. But he wasn't listening. He left the room, came back with a key, and told me to follow him. He led me down to the basement, the part no one used. Cold concrete, no windows, just storage boxes and mildew and silence. At the far end, there was an old storm shelter, a relic from before we'd bought the house. I didn't even know it still opened. He unlocked it, swung the heavy metal door wide, and told me, "This is where you'll stay." I laughed. At first, I thought it was a punishment, a scare tactic, but then he pushed me in and locked the door behind me. No explanation, no goodbye, just a metal clang and darkness. The first few days were the worst. I screamed, I kicked, I begged. I pounded on the door until my fists bled, but no one came. My father had soundproofed the basement so well that even if I set the entire room on fire, no one would smell the smoke. He left me just enough a mattress on the floor, a blanket too thin for winter, a flashlight with fading batteries, and a tray of canned food he'd drop off once a day without a word. There was no bathroom, just a plastic bucket in the corner. No privacy, no plumbing, no dignity. I had to empty and clean it myself with what little water he gave me. Sometimes, not for days. The smell became part of the air, part of me. I stopped noticing after a while, because if you paid too much attention to the filth, you forgot how to survive it. He called it my correction room, said it was for my own good. That I was too fragile, too emotional, too easily manipulated by the outside world. That if I stayed here long enough, I'd come to understand why obedience mattered more than freedom. What he never said, but what I knew deep down, was this. I had embarrassed him. I had crossed the line, and he didn't want to deal with the shame, so he erased me, not with death, but with silence. I don't know exactly when I realized I was pregnant. Maybe it was the nausea, or the way my body ached in ways it never had before. Maybe it was just the quiet. So much of it, for so long, that I finally had no choice but to listen to my body. One day, I looked down at myself in the mirror my father left behind, and I just knew. I cried for hours, not because I was scared of being a mom, but because I already knew what kind of world this child would be born into. I was 16, alone, starving, hidden. There were no doctors, no ultrasounds, no help. Just the cold cement, the pain, and the waiting. My father never once acknowledged it. He never asked. He just started leaving more canned food and water, enough for two. The day I went into labor, I screamed louder than I ever had before. I thought maybe, just maybe, he would open the door. He didn't. He just slid a towel through the hatch and walked away. I gave birth alone, on a plastic sheet, with nothing but a flashlight, and my own shaking hands. I nearly passed out from the blood loss, but then I heard it, the tiniest cry, raw, weak, but alive, a boy, my son, and for the first time in months, I didn't feel alone. I named him Noah. There was no paperwork, no birth certificate, no witnesses, but in my heart, he was Noah. Because like the story from Sunday school, he came to me in the middle of a flood I couldn't escape. The first weeks were the worst. Noah cried constantly. Not because he was fussy, but because the air was always too cold, the milk never enough, the silence too loud, and I had no clue what I was doing. No books, no help, only instincts. I used my old t-shirts to wrap him, used bottled water to wipe him clean, sang him lullabies I could barely remember. My father never once looked me in the eye. He never said a word, but I knew he was watching. The camera on the wall blinked red every few seconds, just enough to remind me I wasn't alone and never free. Every now and then, he'd leave me things more formula, diapers, even children's clothes, still with price tags, like he bought them in bulk and never touched them, but he never asked to see the baby. He never even said his name. To him, we were both mistakes, secrets, a cost to keep hidden, and still, I loved my son more than I feared the dark. When Noah turned one, I made a cake out of crushed granola bars and powdered milk. I lit a candle made from toilet paper, soaked in oil, held him in my lap, and whispered, "You're not nothing, you're everything, but love doesn't fix sickness." And when the fevers started, I panicked. He was breathing too fast, his skin was too hot, his tiny body shook in my arms, and I didn't know what to do. I begged the camera. I screamed into the lens, "Please, he's sick. He needs a doctor. I'm not asking for me. Help him." Silence. Then, a soft clunk from above. A box slid down, children's Tylenol, a thermometer, a note that said, "Keep him warm." I wanted to rip the walls apart, but that night, when Noah's lips turned blue, I made a decision. If my father wouldn't save him, I would, even if it meant risking everything, even if it meant dying for it. He was burning up, his little body, pressed against mine, felt like a furnace. His chest rose and fell too fast, too shallow. His lips were dry, his eyes barely opened. I tried everything. Cool rags, damp cloth, rocking him through the night. But nothing worked. There was no medicine in that basement. No thermometer. No phone. Just Mimsh, my baby boy, and the silence of a locked world. And in that silence, I knew he was dying. I wrapped him in the cleanest blanket I could find and placed him at the base of the stairs, just beneath the basement door. Then I screamed, not his name, not for help. I screamed one word, Dad, because if he let me die, he wouldn't care. But if my baby died, he'd lose the secret he buried everything for. I screamed like my throat was splitting. I screamed until my son started gasping in his sleep, and that's when I heard it. The key, turning in the lock. The door creaked open. He looked at us like we were problems to be solved. Not people, not his child, not his grandchild. I didn't beg, I didn't plead, I just said one thing, as cold and clear as I could. He needs a hospital. If he dies here, the police won't find a secret. They'll find a body. He stared at me for a long time, then finally muttered, "Get dressed. Don't say a word." He gave me old clothes, a loose hoodie, and a surgical mask. He told me to cover my hair, my face, everything. No names, no talking, no mistakes. Then he blindfolded me and drove. I counted the turns, the speed, the bumps in the road, anything I could use later, anything that might help me get back. We arrived at a small urgent care clinic, somewhere remote, quiet. He carried my baby in. I followed, and I waited. For my moment, the nurse asked questions. He answered them all. He said I was his niece, that I was mute, that the baby was his grandson. Sick with the flu, nothing serious. They led us to a side room, and when the nurse took my son to weigh him, I looked her dead in the eyes and whispered, "Help me." She blinked. I said it louder, "Help me. He's not my uncle." I've been locked in a basement for 3 years. He lunged toward me, furious. But the nurse hit a button. 2 security guards stormed in, and that was it. Police came, then paramedics. I was separated from him, asked 100 questions, given food, water, a blanket. But all I cared about was one thing, my son. And when they told me he was stable, I finally let go. I told them everything, my name, my father's name, the street I used to live on, my mother's name. They didn't believe it at first, because on paper, I was already dead. But that night, I saw a sky I hadn't seen in 3 years, a ceiling with stars instead of mold, people who called me by my name, and in a hospital room down the hall, my baby boy was finally breathing steady, not in a cage, not in silence, but in the light. The hospital held me for 3 days. They called it protective medical observation, but I knew what it really was. They were trying to make sense of a story that sounded impossible. A missing girl, declared dead, found alive, with a child, doctors, social workers, detectives. Each one came in with a clipboard and eyes full of disbelief. They asked the same questions again and again, but I answered them, every one, because I didn't want them to doubt for even a second what had happened to me, or to my son. My mother was the first one to arrive. She burst into the room so fast, I barely had time to breathe. She was older than I remembered, smaller somehow, but her eyes, they broke. She fell to her knees and wept into my lap. I'm sorry. I didn't know. He told me you were at boarding school. He told me you wanted to cut contact. I didn't say anything at first. I just held her. Then finally, I asked, why didn't you come home? She looked up, shaking. Because he said I wasn't welcome there anymore either. He said it was better I stayed with Grandma, that you needed time. Her voice cracked. I believed him. I believed him. And he buried you. What followed was chaos. Police raided the house. They found the basement, the hidden lock system, the security footage, the stockpile of baby supplies, everything. They arrested my father on the spot, charged him with unlawful imprisonment, endangerment of a minor, falsification of identity records, and child neglect. But those were just the beginning, because what came next wasn't just about what he did. It was about why he did it. You see, there's something I haven't told you yet. That basement. It wasn't just about punishment or shame. It was about control, about reputation, about the family name. My father wasn't just angry that I had gotten pregnant. He was furious that I had done so under his roof. In his eyes, I was a stain. A threat to everything he'd built. His image as a God-fearing, respectable father. His church, his colleagues, the school board he sat on. I had defied him, so he erased me. He told everyone I'd been accepted into a private girls' academy upstate. He even forged letters, emails, school records. He told my mom it was better that way, told the neighbors I was finding myself in nature. But what he was really doing was hiding the evidence of what happens when you try to control a girl by fear instead of love. I gave birth alone. I raised my son alone, in a basement with no light, no help, no voice, but I survived. And now, the truth is louder than anything he tried to silence. The trial began 6 months later. By then, I had spoken to more reporters, therapists, investigators, and prosecutors than I could count. My story had gone viral. Some called it a miracle. Others called it a horror show. But to me, it was just my life. One I had to fight to reclaim every single day. My father pled not guilty. His lawyers spun a desperate narrative that I was mentally unstable, that I ran away on my own, that he'd only protected me from bad influences. They even tried to suggest that my son had been conceived outside the country, that I'd been involved in some kind of cult. Anything to explain away the facts. But the facts didn't budge. The prosecution had everything. Photos of the locked basement, recordings of my voice calling for help, the falsified documents, school transfers, letters, my fake enrollment. And then there was me. When I took the stand, I didn't cry. I looked my father dead in the eyes and told the world what he had done, how he locked away his own daughter, how he left a newborn in darkness, how he lied to his wife, his neighbors, his church, and he never looked back at me, not once. The jury didn't take long. Guilty. On all counts. He was sentenced to 35 years in federal prison without parole. Some said it was justice. Some said it wasn't enough. For me, it was just a beginning. My son, Noah, is 2 now. He's small for his age, but strong, curious, loud. He's never been afraid of the dark, and maybe that's because I lived in it long enough for both of us. As for my mom, she never left my side again. She helped me find a small apartment, helped me get back into school, watched Noah while I learned how to sleep through the night, without checking for chains. She's not perfect. She missed signs, but she's trying. And she's here. And after everything, that matters more than blame ever could. People still ask me, how did you survive that? And I always answer the same way. I didn't survive it. I outlived it. Because surviving means it's over. And I'm still learning how to live again,